Ever pondered what you'd do if a call were to irrevocably alter your life? Imagine facing a 72-hour ultimatum, securing $800,000, or witnessing your daughter's demise. Carmen, an upstanding accountant, never envisioned she'd be compelled to make a desperate call to someone she hadn't spoken to in years. With her 17-year-old daughter battling leukemia and banking options exhausted, she dredged up a name synonymous with global recognition. But would he even recall her? On the other end of the line stood Michael Jordan, the man who transmuted failures into triumphs, now a billionaire magnate enveloped by opulence and power. But what transpires when the past unexpectedly knocks on your door during your most dire hour? Michael, I realize this must be an absolute shock to receive my call after all this time. I wouldn't burden you unless it were an utterly desperate matter. One call, a split-second decision, an impossible sum for an ordinary family, yet mere digits for a man who'd accumulated an empire. However, when clandestine paparazzi photos surface and social media ignites with speculation of a clandestine affair, how do three lives intertwine in a conflict extending far beyond the realm of finance? This is the tale of how a forgotten romance metamorphosed into a mission, one that would not only save a life, but forge a legacy destined to irrevocably reshape the destinies of countless others. The phone rang 3 times before Carmen could answer. Her hands trembled as she held the receiver, still processing the school secretary's words from moments before. Her 17-year-old daughter, Sophia, had fainted during physical education class and was being taken to the hospital. Carmen abandoned everything at her desk, where she'd worked as an accountant for 15 years, without even saying goodbye to her colleagues. She snatched the car keys, so rushed that she knocked over her purse, scattering documents across the floor. The drive to the hospital seemed interminable. Traffic conspired against her, each red light escalating her anxiety, each passing minute hammering the worst-case scenarios into her mind. Carmen gripped the steering wheel, breathing deeply to quell the rising panic in her chest. Finally, she arrived at the hospital, parking haphazardly and running through the corridors until she found Sophia conscious, but paler than she had ever seen her. The girl lay on a gurney, a nurse checking her blood pressure. "Mom, I'm okay. It was just a momentary indisposition," Sophia murmured, attempting a reassuring smile. "Don't worry, my dear. We'll find out what happened and resolve it together." The attending physician, a middle-aged man named Dr. Martinez with graying hair and a serious gaze, ordered a battery of tests. Carmen observed every movement of the nurses, each device connected to her daughter's delicate arm, every beep of the monitors echoing like drums in her head. Sophia had always been exceptional, gifted in music and academics, with clear aspirations to become a veterinarian, caring for abandoned animals. At 17, she played piano in school performances, composed her own music, and maintained top grades in every subject. Teachers consistently praised her dedication and intelligence, foreseeing a brilliant future. To see her in that hospital bed, needles in her arm, she is everything I have in this world, my reason for living. When the doctor finally called Carmen in for the consultation, she felt the world cease its rotation. The small, windowless office felt stifling, the characteristic scent of hospital disinfectant clinging to the air. Dr. Martinez opened the file containing the test results. The doctor stated firmly, "We must begin treatment immediately. We cannot afford to lose any time. Your daughter is young and strong. She has everything to conquer this battle, but she needs our help." Carmen returned to the room where Sophia was being transferred to the oncology ward. The girl slept soundly, sedated by medications to control pain and discomfort. Carmen held her delicate hand, observing her angelic face, still bearing the features of a child, yet already hinting at the beauty of the woman she would become. Sophia had always been courageous, from a young age, confronting challenges with a determination that impressed everyone who knew her. When at 10 years old she broke her arm falling from her bicycle, she shed not a single tear. Instead, she inquired only about when she could return to playing the piano. When schoolmates taunted her for lacking a father, she held her head high with pride, declaring that she had the best mother in the world, a mother worth 10 fathers combined. Now she would face the greatest challenge of her young life, and Carmen knew her daughter would fight with all her might, but also that she would need far more than courage to win this battle. You are stronger than any illness, my warrior, Carmen whispered, kissing Sophia's forehead. We will conquer this together, as we have always conquered everything. In the following days, Carmen transformed into a true warrior, relentlessly pursuing financial solutions. She visited 6 different banks, presenting proof of income, bank statements, desperately seeking loans. At each institution, the response was the same. Her accountant's income could not support a loan of that astronomical magnitude. Managers looked at her with pity, some attempting to suggest alternatives like raffles or fundraising campaigns, but all knew it wouldn't be enough. Carmen negotiated with the health insurance plan, spending hours on the phone with various departments, but coverage for experimental oncology treatments and cutting-edge medications was severely limited. She contacted all the distant relatives she could find, cousins she hadn't seen in years, aunts and uncles living in other cities, but all were in similar or even worse financial situations than her own. In her 60 years of life, Carmen had never felt so desperate and powerless. Carmen, a fiercely independent and determined woman, raised Sophia single-handedly after the girl's father abandoned them when she was a few months old. I'm sorry, but we cannot approve this loan with your current income, the 6th bank manager repeated. Perhaps you could explore alternative financing options or charitable organizations. Carmen left the bank, feeling utterly defeated for the first time in her life. She'd always found solutions to every problem, always managed to navigate the difficulties that arose. When Sophia needed a computer for schoolwork, Carmen worked overtime for 6 consecutive months, staying late every day. When the girl expressed an interest in piano lessons, Carmen saved every penny for a whole year, eliminating non-essential expenses and preparing packed lunches for work. But this time was different. This wasn't just a few hundred or a few $1,000s. It was an astronomical sum, representing more than a decade's worth of her full salary, excluding basic living expenses. After 5 fruitless days of searching, Carmen returned home and slumped into the kitchen table, completely exhausted. Scattered around her like tangible evidence of her failure were dozens of rejection letters, bank statements, medical estimates, and hospital bills already arriving by mail. $800,000, she whispered, staring at the figures on the latest medical bill. How will a person like me ever raise that kind of money? The house was enveloped in a deathly silence, something Carmen hadn't experienced in 17 years. Sophia had always filled the house with her piano music, her clear laughter on the phone with school friends, her books and notebooks strewn across the dining room table where she did her homework. Now only the echo of a mother's despair, unsure how to save the life of the most important person in the world, remained. Carmen covered her face, tears welling up and tracing paths down her fingers. Tears she had held back for days, maintaining a facade of strength in front of doctors and bank officials. She had faced many battles alone throughout her life, from the challenges of teenage pregnancy to raising a daughter without paternal support, but this one felt insurmountable. Time pressed in on her like an unforgiving hourglass, each day's delay in Sophia's treatment potentially critical to her chances of recovery. Doctors had already made it clear the leukemia was aggressive, and each lost week diminished the possibility of a complete cure. I don't know what to do anymore. I don't know who to ask for help, Carmen whispered into the silence of the kitchen, her voice barely audible. My daughter needs me, and I can't fail her now. Carmen remained seated at the kitchen table for nearly an hour, staring at the scattered papers before her as if they were the pieces of an unsolvable puzzle. The house's silence weighed upon her shoulders like a suffocating blanket, broken only by the rhythmic ticking of the grandfather clock, each tick a measured beat of her mounting despair. She knew she needed to do something to distract her mind from the encroaching panic threatening to overwhelm her. Rising slowly as if bearing the weight of the world, she walked into the living room. Her bare feet brushed against the cool wooden floor as she searched for the television remote, lost somewhere amidst the plush cushions of the sofa. Perhaps some mindless distraction could calm her nerves, offer a new perspective on this desperate situation. Carmen flicked on the television, aimlessly scanning channels, smiling chefs preparing elaborate dishes, newscasters dissecting economic woes and political turmoil, commercials for luxury automobiles she could never afford, all blurred together before her tired, tear-streaked eyes. "I need to stop thinking about this for a few minutes, or I'll collapse," she muttered, her trembling fingers fumbling with the remote. "Maybe a little distraction will allow me to think more clearly." Then she landed on a rerun of Space Jam. On screen, Michael Jordan, in his iconic Chicago Bulls jersey, smiled with the magnetic charisma that had captivated the world. A strange warmth stirred within Carmen, as if something within her had awakened from a decades-long slumber. She leaned forward in the sofa, drawn closer to the glowing screen, almost as if she could touch the image before her eyes. Michael's face on the screen appeared younger than she remembered from recent public appearances, closer to the version she knew decades earlier, when they were both just teenagers with grand dreams and seemingly minor problems. Carmen felt her heart quicken as long-buried memories began to surface, like old photographs being revealed in a dark room. That confident smile, those determined eyes that seemed capable of seeing through any obstacle, that self-assured posture, she recognized it in the lanky 17-year-old boy with seemingly impossible dreams and a determination that impressed everyone around him. His voice in the film brought back memories of conversations they'd had years ago, when he spoke of his future plans with a conviction bordering on arrogance, but which she always knew was genuine self-belief. "Michael," she whispered, uttering the name for the first time in so long, as if it were a prayer. "My God, how could I have completely forgotten? He was always there when I truly needed him." Memories flooded back, like a torrent breaking a long-held dam. Carmen closed her eyes, transported back to the hallways of the high school, where she and Michael walked together between classes, discussing everything from schoolwork to their deepest dreams for the future. He was unlike the other boys his age, possessing a seriousness and determination that impressed not only classmates but also teachers and school staff. Carmen vividly remembered Michael's talk about his dreams of playing professional basketball, even when others mocked him for being cut from the school's varsity team the previous year. She was there on that fateful afternoon when he came home with eyes red, not from tears of defeat, but from pure anger and unwavering resolve, a strength she'd never seen in anyone so young. The coach had said he was too short, too thin, lacked the physical power or presence to play on the varsity team that competed against other schools. But Michael didn't accept that assessment as a final verdict. Instead, he channeled that rejection into an internal fire that would burn for years to come. Carmen witnessed every step of this transformative journey, each drop of sweat poured into extra training sessions, every moment of doubt overcome with sheer willpower and a work ethic she'd never seen in someone so young. "I'll prove them completely wrong about me, Carmen," she recalled him saying, his voice firm and resolute. "One day everyone in the world will know my name, and they'll bitterly regret doubting me." Carmen recalled with crystal clarity the countless visits to the Jordan family home, a simple but always immaculate residence. James Jordan, Michael's father, returned daily from the electrical equipment factory with hands greasy with grime and a face etched with the weariness of hard labor, yet always with a genuine smile for his children and a word of encouragement for each. Dolores Jordan, the mother, was a veritable force of nature, holding the entire family together with her tireless energy, unwavering faith, and seemingly limitless capacity for creative problem-solving. Carmen observed firsthand how this hard-working family navigated significant financial hardship, late bills, unexpected expenses, and the constant pressure to maximize every dollar, yet never lost their dignity, familial unity, or hope for brighter days through hard work and perseverance. She vividly remembered Dolores holding down two jobs, one during the day as a secretary in a local office, and another at night cleaning downtown offices, to help pay the family's mounting bills while James worked overtime at the factory whenever possible, returning home utterly exhausted, but still finding the energy to assist his children with homework and discuss their individual aspirations. Despite the persistent financial hardships and constant challenges, the Jordan household always reverberated with genuine laughter, animated discussions about the future, and an atmosphere of unconditional love and mutual support. A stark contrast to Carmen's own dysfunctional family, where financial woes typically led to arguments, recriminations, and a tense environment where everyone walked on eggshells. The Jordan family never gave up on anything, no matter how difficult, she murmured, a profound pang of nostalgia piercing her chest. They tackled each problem as a true team, always united and always finding strength in one another. The memories intensified, becoming even more poignant, as Carmen recalled entire weekends spent with Michael, assisting him in his training regimen on the school's community court. She held the ball as he executed hundreds of consecutive free throws, meticulously counting the baskets as he attempted to surpass his own weekly personal bests, timing his speed and endurance drills designed to elevate his physical conditioning. Michael possessed a work ethic unseen in anyone of their age, or even in many adults she knew. While other teenagers were enjoying weekend parties, aimlessly wandering the local mall, or simply sleeping in to recover from the prior week's school schedule, Michael was tirelessly honing his skills, poring over basketball plays in borrowed library books, analyzing the techniques of professional players on televised games, and practicing specific movements until they became second nature. Carmen vividly remembered his impassioned pronouncements on personal responsibility, the importance of caring for family and creating better opportunities for those around them, the potential for using any innate talent to make a positive difference in the world. He wasn't merely a naturally gifted athlete reliant solely on innate abilities. He was a young man imbued with robust values and a mature philosophy of life, instilled by parents who, despite limited financial resources and formal education, possessed an extraordinary wealth of character, integrity, and resolve in raising exemplary citizens. Michael always said true success never comes without genuine sacrifice and hard work, she mused, recalling his insightful words. He solemnly vowed that when he reached the pinnacle of the world, he would never forget his origins or the people who had helped him. Carmen rose from the couch and began pacing the living room, her thoughts a torrent of long-suppressed emotions, vivid memories flooding her mind. She recalled in a stark detail their profound philosophical conversations about the future, their shared aspiration to make a meaningful difference in the world, the responsibilities inherent in success, and the paramount importance of never losing sight of the fundamental values that guided them. Michael spoke with genuine passion about assisting those less fortunate, particularly young people facing obstacles similar to his own, about leveraging any success he might achieve to create educational and athletic opportunities for others lacking access to such resources. Carmen vividly remembered his genuine excitement upon learning of her intention to study accounting, specifically to aid local small businesses and working families through intelligent financial planning and accessible accounting guidance. They shared a worldview fundamentally grounded in hard work, absolute honesty, personal integrity, and genuine social responsibility. Michael was never the type to pursue fame or wealth for the mere status or power they could confer. He sought excellence in all he did, intending to use that excellence as a platform to accomplish something far greater than his personal ambitions. Carmen knew through countless conversations and personal observations that behind all that fierce determination, intense competitiveness, and seemingly limitless ambition lay a genuinely generous and compassionate heart that deeply cared for others, particularly those struggling against adversity or facing seemingly insurmountable challenges. He always had an absolutely golden heart hidden beneath that fierce and intimidating competitiveness, she murmured with a melancholic smile. Michael never, ever denied genuine assistance to those who truly needed it, even when he himself had very little to offer. The most poignant and emotionally charged memories surfaced as Carmen meticulously recalled the particularly difficult moments they shared during those crucial, formative years of their lives. She remembered with perfect clarity a specific autumn afternoon when her own family was experiencing a severe financial crisis following her father's job loss at the local factory. She casually mentioned during a conversation that she might have to give up some important extracurricular activities and even consider a part-time job to help with household expenses. Michael immediately, without any hesitation, offered concrete and practical assistance, saying he would speak to his own parents about possibilities of family loans or creative ways to secure scholarships or assistance programs that could alleviate the financial pressure. Even as a teenager with no financial resources of his own or influential connections, Michael consistently found innovative and effective ways to support his friends in times of need. Carmen emotionally recalled how he organized an informal but impressively successful school fundraiser when a classmate completely lost their family home in a devastating fire that destroyed not only the physical structure, but also all the accumulated personal possessions and family memories spanning generations. Michael not only donated his most prized possessions, including athletic equipment he had saved months to purchase, but also leveraged his natural charisma and leadership skills to inspire significant contributions from fellow students, teachers, school staff, and even local merchants. His innate ability to mobilize people of all ages and socioeconomic backgrounds for worthy and essential causes was evident and awe-inspiring even at that young age, showcasing leadership qualities that transcended his athletic prowess. Carmen, in retrospect, realized that this natural generosity, genuine compassion, and inspiring leadership were fundamental and immutable characteristics of Michael's personality, not something he artificially cultivated after achieving global fame and financial success. She instinctively knew how to unite entirely disparate people for a cause greater than themselves, she thought, a sudden spark of hope blossoming in her heart. Michael was never one to ignore a sincere plea for help, especially when family or genuine need were involved. Carmen abruptly stopped walking and stared intently at the television, where Michael Jordan continued to shine as the global icon and inspiration he had become through decades of hard work, tireless dedication, and success in multiple spheres. A notion began to form gradually in her mind, tentative and almost unbelievable at first, but gaining strength, clarity, and tangible possibility with each passing second as she processed the flood of memories that had resurfaced. Could it truly be possible after all these years? After all the global fame, the accumulated fortune, the global ventures and responsibilities he now carried, would Michael still remember her and the moments they shared during those formative years? More importantly, would he still recall and value the fundamental principles and human values they had shared during those critical years of personal development? Carmen knew she was utterly desperate, and desperate people sometimes have ideas that seem utterly crazy or unrealistic to those observing from the outside. But this possibility didn't feel like madness or fantasy. It felt like a genuine, tangible opportunity, rooted in authentic memories and genuine experiences of who Michael Jordan truly was as a person beneath the layer of celebrity, fame, and commercial success. Carmen felt deep in her heart, with a conviction that surprised her for its intensity, that the generous, loyal, compassionate boy she had known and admired still existed somewhere within the powerful, successful man on television, speaking about social responsibility and aiding underprivileged communities. If there's a single person in this entire world who would truly understand my desperate situation, she whispered to herself, her conviction growing, and who possesses both the power and the will to help, it would be Michael Jordan, who has always kept his promises. Carmen switched off the television with a sudden, powerful determination that surprised her for its clarity and intensity. She ascended the stairs to the attic, a dusty, cobweb-filled space she hadn't visited in years, overflowing with yellowed cardboard boxes, brimming with memories, photographs, and relics from decades past. Methodically, she sifted through faded graduation photos, yellowed yearbooks, love letters from failed romances, and small sentimental trinkets until she unearthed a small, ornate wooden box holding her most cherished and significant adolescent treasures. Her hands trembled visibly as she gently opened the lid, revealing sepia-toned photographs with serrated edges, meticulously preserved basketball game tickets, a hospital identification bracelet from the time she broke her wrist at 16, and seemingly insignificant items that bore the emotional weight of a lifetime of significant memories. Amidst this trove of nostalgia, she found precisely what she sought: a slightly faded black and white photograph of her and Michael, both 17, beaming and embracing after a particularly crucial high school basketball victory against their rivals. On the back, penned in Michael's youthful yet already confident and distinctive script, was the simple yet profoundly meaningful message: "Forever friends, Michael." Carmen held the photograph with the delicate care of a fragile crystal, and tears of hope mingled with nostalgia began to slowly trace paths down her weary face. "Forever friends," she repeated the words penned decades ago, as if a sacred mantra. "Does he still remember me after all this time? Would he help me now?" Michael Jordan sat in his Italian leather armchair on the 42nd floor of the building, housing the Jordan brand offices, observing the frenetic activity of the streets below through panoramic windows. His massive mahogany desk was laden with multi-million-dollar contracts awaiting his signature, global brand sponsorship proposals, and financial reports showcasing the exponential growth of his empire. Michael held a cup of exquisite Colombian coffee, a gift from a Nike executive, while reviewing the Jordan brand's latest quarter figures, which had surpassed even the most optimistic projections. At 61, Michael had transitioned from a legendary athlete to a billionaire businessman, yet retained the same intensity and competitive focus that had defined his basketball career. His private secretary, Elena, a 50-year-old efficient woman who had worked with him for over a decade, discreetly knocked before entering, a slightly bewildered expression gracing her face. She carried a cordless phone, appearing hesitant before speaking, a stark contrast to her usual assuredness in administrative duties. "Mr. Jordan, there's a call for you, a woman named Carmen," Elena stated, pausing. "She insists it's extremely important and claims you two knew each other in your youth. She says it's urgent." Michael was about to bring the cup to his lips when he heard the name. Time seemed to momentarily suspend, and he experienced a jolt of recognition, a resurgence of memories meticulously stored in a remote corner of his consciousness. The cup slipped from his grasp as if animated, falling in slow motion until it shattered against the polished marble floor, scattering hot coffee and shards of porcelain across the surface. Elena recoiled, visibly alarmed by her boss's uncharacteristic reaction, a man who typically maintained absolute composure even in the most demanding situations. Michael remained motionless for several seconds, his gaze fixated on the broken fragments, his mind grappling with the implausibility of what he had just heard. Carmen. Could it truly be the same Carmen from school, the bright and determined girl who had been his closest confidant during his formative years? He hadn't heard that name in years, and now she was on the other end of the line, demanding an urgent conversation. "Are you all right, Mr. Jordan? You seem to have seen a ghost," Elena inquired, genuinely concerned. "Yes, it's all right, Elena, but I wasn't expecting this particular call, not in a lifetime." Michael quickly composed himself, exhibiting the same resilience that had made him renowned for his game-winning plays in the most critical moments. He gestured for Elena to clear the coffee while extending his hand to pick up the phone, his palms subtly damp, a sensation he hadn't experienced in years. His competitive mind immediately began formulating questions. Why would Carmen be calling after all this time? What could be so urgent that it prompted her to seek him out after decades of silence? Michael took a deep breath and pressed the button to accept the call, mentally preparing himself to hear a voice that had been the soundtrack to some of the most pivotal moments of his youth. When Carmen began speaking, her voice was noticeably choked, punctuated by sobs she struggled, largely unsuccessfully, to control. Michael instantly recognized the timbre, slightly more mature and laden with experience, yet unmistakably the same person who used to engage him in hours-long conversations about dreams and aspirations when they were both 17. "Michael, I understand this call must be a complete surprise after so long," Carmen said, battling to maintain composure. "I would never trouble you if it weren't something absolutely desperate, something involving life or death." Michael immediately sensed that something was profoundly amiss. Throughout his years as a professional athlete, he had cultivated an almost superhuman ability to read people and situations, a skill that translated seamlessly into the business world. The desperation in Carmen's voice was palpable, genuine, and carried an emotional weight that transcended any superficial drama. Michael rose from his chair and began pacing the office, a long-standing habit that always helped him think more clearly under pressure. His analytical mind, honed to make swift decisions in high-stakes situations, began processing every possible scenario. Carmen wasn't the type to reach out for trivial favors or to exploit his fame. She had always been proud, independent, the kind of person who solved her own problems without relying on others. If she was calling now, crying, talking about life or death, then the situation was truly grave, and deserved his immediate and undivided attention. "Carmen, take a deep breath and tell me what's happening," Michael said, employing the firm yet comforting tone he'd learned to deploy in crisis situations. "You know you can trust me, just as we always could trust each other when we were young." Carmen began to explain about Sophia, her 17-year-old daughter who had been diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia. Her voice fluctuated between utter despair and a maternal resolve that Michael immediately recognized as the same kind of strength his own mother, Dolores, had always demonstrated when the Jordan family faced hardship. Carmen spoke of the astronomical treatment costs, the denied loans, the mountain of medical bills totaling $800,000, a sum entirely beyond the reach of an accountant who had always lived within her financial means. Michael listened intently, feeling a familiar blend of anger and determination rising in his chest. It was the same feeling he felt when witnessing injustice on the court, when someone tried to harm one of his teammates, or when confronted with situations where good people suffered due to circumstances beyond their control. Michael had become a billionaire, yet he never forgot the sensation of lacking sufficient resources to resolve significant problems, of depending on the generosity and solidarity of others to overcome seemingly insurmountable obstacles. $800,000 to save the life of a 17-year-old girl, Michael thought, feeling a familiar surge of indignation. This is precisely the kind of situation where I can make a truly meaningful difference in someone's life. Michael stopped pacing and positioned himself again before the window, observing the movement of people on the sidewalks, each carrying their own invisible burdens and challenges. He thought of Sophia, a teenager he had never met but who had become profoundly real in his mind through Carmen's desperate words. Michael recalled his own youth, the moments when the future seemed uncertain, the times when his family had needed the help of neighbors and friends to overcome financial difficulties. Michael considered all the opportunities he'd been given throughout his life, from the coach who finally accepted him onto the basketball team to the executives who had bet on his commercial potential. He always knew his success wasn't solely attributable to his individual talent, but also to a supportive network encompassing family, friends, mentors, and even strangers who believed in him when he needed it most. Now he had the opportunity to be that support system for Carmen and Sophia, to be the person who could make the difference between life and death for a family facing their greatest battle. "Carmen, you need to stop worrying about financial burdens from this very moment," Michael said, with the authority of someone accustomed to resolving complex problems. "Your daughter will receive the best available treatment, and we will meet immediately to discuss every detail." A familiar surge of adrenaline coursed through Michael's veins, the same sensation he experienced before crucial games or important negotiations. His strategic mind was already formulating action plans, identifying the best pediatric oncology hospitals, considering the most renowned physicians he knew through his philanthropic connections. Carmen was crying on the other end of the line, but now her tears were tears of relief and gratitude, not despair. He heard her attempt to express thanks, but gently interrupted, explaining that gratitude wasn't necessary between true friends. He glanced at Elena, who had finished clearing the coffee and was now observing the conversation with respectful curiosity. Michael gestured, indicating he needed to cancel all his day's appointments, something she had never witnessed him do in his entire professional career. Elena immediately grasped the gravity of the situation and began taking notes on which meetings needed rescheduling and which executives needed to be informed of the change in schedule. "Meet me at the Stellar Cafe across the street in 15 minutes, Michael instructed, checking his Rolex. "We'll solve this together, Carmen, just as we always solved everything when we were young." Michael hung up and immediately began moving with the efficiency of a general organizing a military operation. He grabbed his designer jacket, checked his wallet and keys, and instructed Elena on how to proceed with the meeting cancellations. Elena, demonstrating the professional discretion that had made her indispensable, asked no questions about the nature of the emergency, merely confirming that all appointments would be rescheduled appropriately and that she would remain available by phone should he require further assistance. Michael exited the office with decisive strides, yet his mind was divided between the present and the past, between the billionaire businessman he had become and the teenager who had vowed never to forget his origins. While waiting for the elevator, Michael reflected on how life had a mysterious way of bringing the past back into the present, typically at moments least expected. The elevator arrived and he entered, pressing the ground floor button with more force than necessary, a physical manifestation of the emotional tension he was experiencing internally. After all this time, Carmen returns to my life in a life or death situation, Michael mused during the descent. Perhaps fate is giving me an opportunity to repay all the friendship she offered me. Minutes after Michael's hurried departure, the elevator doors reopened and Ivette Prieto emerged, carrying a small bag from a French patisserie Michael adored. She had decided to surprise her husband, bringing his favorite pastries to brighten what she knew would be a day filled with important meetings and stressful decisions. Ivette, at 47, maintained the natural elegance that had made her an international model, yet now her beauty was complemented by the wisdom and maturity of a woman who had learned to navigate intelligently the complex world of being married to one of the most renowned personalities on the planet. She greeted Elena with the warm smile she always reserved for the staff who cared well for Michael, but immediately sensed something was different in the office atmosphere. Elena appeared agitated, fragments of china littered the trash, and a faint aroma of spilled coffee still hung in the air. Ivette had known her husband for over a decade and knew that Michael never broke things accidentally. He was an exceptionally controlled individual in his movements and actions. "Elena, where is Michael?" "I came to surprise him," Ivette said, discreetly observing the signs of agitation in the office. "He went down to the cafe across the street to meet someone. He said it was urgent." Ivette slightly furrowed her brow, a nearly imperceptible gesture revealing her keen ability to assess situations with precision. In all their years of marriage, she had never seen Michael cancel important meetings on a whim. He was meticulously organized, planning each day with military precision, and treated his professional commitments with the same respect and dedication he had always shown toward basketball. Elena seemed genuinely bewildered by the details, confirming that Michael had received a call from a woman and immediately canceled his entire day's schedule. Ivette moved to the panoramic office windows, strategically positioning herself to have a clear view of the cafe entrance across the street. Her feminine intuition, honed by years of experience in the fashion and business world, told her that something significant was unfolding. Ivette was not a paranoid or possessive wife, but she was observant and intelligent enough to recognize when situations deviated from her husband's usual patterns of behavior. "Michael never acts impulsively like this, especially when it comes to canceling important meetings," Ivette mused, adjusting her position for a better view. "Whatever is happening, it must be something truly serious to elicit such a reaction from him." Through the window, Ivette clearly saw Michael walking with tense, purposeful strides towards the cafe. His body language revealed a mixture of anxiety and resolve, which she recognized from times when he faced particularly difficult business decisions or delicate family matters. Ivette observed an elegant woman of approximately 60 waiting at a cafe table, a lady who maintained a dignified posture despite obvious signs of emotional distress. The woman had well-groomed gray hair, wore simple yet high-quality attire, and her hands trembled slightly as she nervously stirred a cup of tea. Even from a distance, Ivette could sense the woman had recently cried, and there was something in her posture that suggested a combination of despair and hope. As Michael approached the table, Ivette observed the reaction of both of them. The woman rose immediately, and a moment of mutual recognition transcended the decades of separation. "Who is this woman who could make my husband abandon everything and rush to find her?" Ivette pondered, feeling a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. "And why do I have the feeling that our life is about to change significantly?" Michael entered the stellar cafe with determined strides, his eyes rapidly scanning the surroundings until they located Carmen, seated at a discreet table in the right corner of the establishment. Years had passed since their last encounter, yet the recognition was instantaneous and overwhelming. Carmen had aged with grace, her now gray hair framing a face that retained the same intelligent expressiveness he remembered from their adolescence, although now etched with lines of experience, and more recently, the weight of maternal despair. She wore a simple navy blue dress, elegant but clearly not a costly piece, and her hands trembled slightly as they held an untouched teacup. Michael approached the table with the same controlled intensity that had always characterized his movements, whether on the basketball court or in corporate boardrooms. When Carmen looked up and saw him, her features contorted into a mixture of relief, gratitude, and a vulnerable emotionality she was clearly struggling to contain. "Michael, I can't believe you actually came, that you remembered me after all this time," Carmen said, her voice choked with emotion. "I was so afraid you wouldn't remember, or that you'd think I was trying to take advantage of your fame." Michael sat down opposite her, completely ignoring the curious glances of other cafe patrons who had recognized his presence. His posture was tense, leaning forward, demonstrating the same total concentration he applied to any situation he deemed important. The years had transformed the tall, slender boy into an imposing and successful man, but Carmen could see in his eyes the same intensity and loyalty that had impressed her during their teenage years. Michael discreetly signaled the waiter, indicating he wished to be undisturbed, then focused all his attention on Carmen with the same intense concentration he reserved for his most critical business decisions. He meticulously observed every detail of her expression, reading between the lines the depth of her despair, applying the same human reading skills that had made him a renowned negotiator in the corporate world. "Carmen," Michael said, his voice carrying the inherent authority honed over decades, "before we discuss what's happening now, I need to understand these past years from your perspective. Tell me about your life, your family, so I can fully grasp the situation we face." Carmen took a deep breath, mentally organizing years of experiences to condense into these crucial minutes. She began by explaining how, at 25, she married Roberto, a civil engineer she met at university, a good, hardworking man who unconditionally supported her professional dreams and aspirations. They built a solid and happy life, her working as an accountant for local small businesses, while Roberto pursued his civil engineering career, both meticulously saving every penny to eventually buy a home and start a family. Sophia was born when Carmen was 43, a high-risk pregnancy that thankfully resulted in a healthy and extraordinarily intelligent daughter who became the center of their world. Roberto was a devoted and loving father, instilling in Sophia values of responsibility, hard work, and the importance of helping others, values deeply shared by Carmen and himself. Carmen paused, her hands tightening around her teacup as she prepared to share the most difficult part of her story. "Roberto was a wonderful man, Michael, precisely the kind of person you would approve of had you known him," Carmen said, a single tear tracing a path down her cheek. "He passed away 3 years ago in a construction accident, and since then I've been raising Sophia alone, striving to be strong for her." Michael felt a familiar surge of anger and injustice, the same feeling that gripped him whenever he witnessed good people suffering due to circumstances beyond their control. Instinctively, he reached out and touched Carmen's arm, a gesture of genuine solidarity. She visibly received it with gratitude. Michael had encountered countless individuals throughout his career, from high-net-worth athletes to powerful executives. But he consistently held a special regard for those who met adversity with dignity, working diligently to provide for their families. Carmen clearly fell into this category, a woman who had built a respectable life through unwavering hard work and dedication, only to be confronted by tragedies entirely beyond her control. The lines etched on her face spoke volumes of the heavy burden she had carried in recent years, single-handedly raising a teenager while grappling with the grief and financial strain of being the sole provider for her family. "You raised Sophia alone for 3 years, remaining steadfast while processing your own loss," Michael observed, acknowledging the fortitude this required. "This tells me everything I need to know about the kind of mother and woman you've become." Carmen continued her narrative, depicting Sophia as an exceptional young woman who had inherited the intelligence and determination of both parents. Sophia was a model student, maintaining top grades in all subjects, actively participating in community animal protection initiatives, and had begun working part-time at a local veterinary clinic to gain practical experience in the field she'd chosen for her future career. Carmen spoke with maternal pride about how Sophia had handled her father's death with remarkable maturity, assuming additional household responsibilities to assist her mother and maintaining high grades despite the emotional trauma. The girl had become not just a daughter, but a true companion and source of strength for Carmen during the most challenging times. Carmen explained that Sophia had always demonstrated a natural compassion for injured animals and an unwavering resolve to become a veterinarian, helping creatures who couldn't speak for themselves. Michael listened intently, mentally constructing a picture of a young woman who seemed to have inherited the finest qualities of both parents. Sophia sounds like an extraordinary young woman, precisely the kind of person who deserves every possible opportunity in life, Michael said, his admiration genuine. Now tell me about what's happening with her. What is the medical situation we are facing? Carmen took another sip of tea, bracing herself for the most devastating part of her story. From her office on the 42nd floor, Ivette watched through the panoramic window as Michael and Carmen hurried from the cafe and into his car. Even from the considerable distance, she could discern that something significant had transpired during their conversation. Michael's body language was unmistakable. Tense shoulders, quick, decisive movements, the upright posture he always adopted when entering full action mode. Carmen walked beside him with slightly hesitant steps, like someone still grappling with a sudden shift in circumstances. Ivette had known Michael intimately for over a decade, and she knew that when he entered this particular mental state, a critical decision had been made and would be executed with the same military precision he applied to every significant aspect of his life. She observed Michael opening the passenger door for Carmen, a gesture of courtesy that confirmed that, whatever the situation, he was treating the woman with genuine respect and consideration. Something truly serious is afoot for Michael to act this way, Ivette mused, intently observing each movement. And whatever it is, he's clearly decided to personally engage in resolving the problem. Ivette rapidly descended to the lobby, reaching the main entrance just as Michael's car pulled away from the curb. Her feminine intuition, honed by years of experience navigating the international fashion and business world, told her this was not a situation to ignore or dismiss. Ivette swiftly signaled for a passing taxi, entering with the alacrity of someone accustomed to making swift decisions in uncertain circumstances. The driver, a middle-aged man with a local accent, greeted her politely as she settled into the back seat. Ivette discreetly pointed to the black sedan a few blocks ahead, instructing the driver to maintain a safe distance, but to keep the car in sight. She wasn't driven by jealousy or unfounded suspicion, but by a genuine concern rooted in the knowledge that Michael never acted impulsively without extremely serious reasons. Throughout the journey, Ivette meticulously observed the route, attempting to deduce the urgent trip's final destination. "Follow that black car, but keep your distance," Ivette instructed the driver, her voice revealing calm determination. "I don't want them to realize they're being followed. I just need to know where they're going." The taxi followed Michael's sedan through the moderate city center traffic, passing several commercial blocks before entering a more residential area that gradually yielded to a well-established medical district. Yvette's concern intensified as she realized they were heading toward a section of the city known for housing some of the metropolitan area's most prominent and specialized hospitals. When Michael's car finally stopped in front of an imposing building clearly marked Children's Hospital, Ivette felt her stomach clench with a mixture of apprehension and sudden understanding. Children's Hospital meant a child was involved, which could explain Michael's intense emotional reaction and his decision to cancel all professional commitments. Ivette instructed the driver to pull over in a position that allowed her unobstructed yet discreet observation of the hospital entrance, paid the fare, and remained in the taxi for a few moments, processing the implications of her discovery. "Children's Hospital?" Ivette murmured, now more concerned than suspicious about her husband's motivations. What the devil is going on? What kind of medical emergency involving a child would cause Michael to react this way? Michael and Carmen entered the main lobby of the Children's Hospital with determined strides, heading straight to the information desk where a duty nurse greeted them with the professional aplomb, typical of someone accustomed to dealing with families in crisis situations. Carmen provided Sophia's name and room number, while Michael meticulously observed the surrounding environment, noting the colorful decor on the walls designed to soothe frightened children and their worried parents. The hospital held that unmistakable aroma of disinfectant mingled with something attempting to be comforting, and Michael could hear the faint echo of medical conversations, electronic equipment, and occasionally the whimper of a small child. They followed the long, well-lit corridors until they reached Sophia's room, where Carmen paused at the doorway, taking a deep breath before entering. Michael respected this moment of maternal preparation, acknowledging the courage required for a mother to see her daughter on a hospital bed connected to medical equipment. When they finally stepped inside, Michael saw Sophia for the first time, a 17-year-old, though pale and visibly weakened by illness, maintaining a spark of intelligence and determination in her eyes that instantly reminded him of Carmen at the same age. "Sophia, my dear, we've brought a very special friend who wants to meet you," Carmen said, her voice attempting an optimistic tone despite the gravity of the situation. "This is Michael Jordan, and he's here to help us with your treatment." Sophia looked at Michael with a mixture of surprise and genuine admiration, clearly recognizing who he was despite her weakened state. Michael approached the bed with the same gentleness he always demonstrated when visiting sick children through his philanthropic endeavors, instinctively knowing how to balance his imposing presence with the sensitivity required to avoid intimidating a young patient. He pulled a chair closer to the bed and sat, placing himself at Sophia's eye level, a technique he had learned years earlier during his initial hospital visits with charitable organizations. Despite the physical weakness brought on by leukemia, Sophia managed a genuine smile and extended a trembling hand to greet Michael, who held it with paternal care. Michael began to converse with Sophia about her dreams of becoming a veterinarian, her passion for helping animals, and how she could use her current experience to inspire other young people facing similar challenges in the future. The conversation flowed naturally, with Sophia displaying the same sharp intellect and emotional maturity that Carmen had described over coffee. "Sophia, I want you to know that we will handle everything related to your treatment," Michael stated with unwavering conviction. "Your sole responsibility now is to focus on getting strong and recovering completely." As Michael spoke with Sophia, Carmen watched the interaction with silent tears of gratitude welling in her eyes. Seeing Michael treat his daughter with such gentleness and respect solidified all the positive memories she held of his character. Michael retrieved his phone and embarked on a series of calls, mobilizing his network of medical and philanthropic contacts with the efficiency of a general orchestrating a complex military operation. He spoke with hospital administrators about transferring Sophia to a specialized ward, contacted renowned pediatric oncologists whom he knew through his medical research donations, and instructed his financial team to immediately release all necessary funds to cover treatment costs. Carmen watched in awe as Michael transformed an impossible situation into a concrete organizational reality within minutes. Each call was made with authority, but also genuine compassion, demonstrating that for Michael, this wasn't simply a financial transaction, but a personal commitment to saving the life of a promising young woman. "Dr. Harrison, I need you to personally take over Sophia." Sophia was to be transferred that same afternoon to a specialized suite on the pediatric oncology floor, where she would be treated by a medical team led by one of the country's top specialists in childhood leukemia. Michael had also arranged for Carmen to be accommodated in an adjacent suite, ensuring her proximity to Sophia throughout the treatment, eliminating any further logistical or accommodation concerns. Carmen was visibly moved, struggling to find adequate words to express her gratitude for something that transcended any ordinary act of friendship. In a spontaneous maternal impulse, she embraced Michael tightly, a pure gesture of thanks emanating from the heart of a mother who had just witnessed her daughter's life saved. "Michael, I have no words to express my gratitude for what you've just done for my family," Carmen said, still holding him. "You literally saved my daughter's life, and I will never ever forget this generosity." Precisely at this poignant moment, Ivette appeared at the door of the room, having followed the information desk's directions to locate Michael at the hospital. She stopped abruptly upon seeing her husband embraced by an unknown woman in a hospital room, her mind rapidly processing the scene before her eyes. Michael noticed Yvette's presence and immediately disengaged from Carmen, his face registering genuine surprise mingled with a slight tension, as if aware he needed to clarify a complex situation that could be easily misinterpreted. Yvette carefully observed the body language of both, noting that the embrace seemed more maternal and grateful than romantic, yet still feeling the innate need to understand exactly what was transpiring. Carmen, too, registered Yvette's arrival and instinctively grasped the delicate nature of the situation, recognizing that her presence and demonstration of affection could be misconstrued by Michael's wife. The atmosphere in the room instantly shifted from relieved celebration to a palpable tension demanding immediate and honest resolution. "Yvette, I wasn't expecting you." "How did you know I was here?" Michael asked, clearly surprised but attempting to maintain composure. "Allow me to elucidate the entire situation before you draw any hasty conclusions about what you're witnessing." Demonstrating the same sensitivity and emotional intelligence that always defined her character, Carmen immediately recognized that her presence was disrupting the familial dynamic and made a respectful, temporary departure to allow Michael and Ivette to converse privately. She approached Sophia, gently kissed her forehead, and whispered that she would return in a few minutes. Carmen then politely addressed Ivette, introducing herself briefly as a former school friend, and explained that she needed to speak with the medical staff about the new treatment arrangements Michael had orchestrated. She exited the room with dignity, closing the door gently behind her, leaving the couple alone for the necessary and crucial conversation she knew was impending. Her departure not only showcased respect for Michael and Yvette's marital privacy, but also a mature understanding that successful marriages demand honest and transparent communication, especially when unforeseen circumstances create the potential for misinterpretations. "I'm going to take a walk around the hospital to allow you to speak in private," Carmen diplomatically stated. "Michael, Yvette, you need a moment to clarify everything between yourselves without external interference." Yvette closed the door to the room and turned to Michael, her expression controlled yet resolute, the look of a woman needing honest and comprehensive answers. Throughout their 12 years of marriage, she had learned to recognize when Michael was facing complex situations requiring careful explanation, and her experience told her this was one of those times. Yvette's concerns stemmed not from irrational jealousy or marital insecurity, but from the legitimate need to understand why her husband had canceled all professional commitments to aid a woman she had never met or heard mentioned in over a decade of their relationship. Michael immediately recognized the necessity of complete transparency regarding the entire situation, from the unexpected phone call to his decision to mobilize considerable resources to assist Carmen and Sophia. Michael began his explanation methodically, employing the same direct and honest tone that always characterized his important conversations with Ivette, knowing that any attempt to minimize or omit details would be counterproductive to the marital trust they had built over the years. "Yvette, I want you to sit down because I need to explain this entire situation from the beginning," Michael said, gesturing to a nearby chair. "Carmen called me today for the first time in years because her 17-year-old daughter is dying of leukemia." Michael detailed how he had known Carmen during their adolescent years, emphasizing that their relationship had been one of profound friendship and mutual support during crucial formative years, but never a serious romance or a lost love that could jeopardize their current marriage. He described how Carmen had been a stabilizing presence in his youth, a confidant who supported him during moments of rejection and doubt, and how she had witnessed the family values and character that were fundamental in shaping him as a person. Michael explained that Carmen had married, become widowed, and raised Sophia alone, living an honest and hardworking life until confronted with a medical situation completely beyond her financial capabilities. He stressed that his decision to help was not based on residual romantic feelings, but on the same compassion and sense of social responsibility that motivated all his philanthropic endeavors. Michael made it clear that when he heard about a 17-year-old facing a potentially fatal illness, his reaction was purely humanitarian, based on values that Ivette knew and respected in him. "This is a life-or-death situation for an innocent teenager, Ivette," Michael explained with utter sincerity. "I would have reacted the same way if any person with a similar history had sought me in despair." Ivette listened to Michael's entire explanation with careful attention, observing not only his words, but also his body language, tone of voice, and facial expressions. During 12 years of marriage, she had developed a refined ability to detect when Michael was being completely honest versus when he was omitting details or softening aspects of complicated situations. In this instance, all signs pointed to complete transparency. Michael maintained direct eye contact, his posture was open and relaxed, and his gestures were consistent with the patterns she recognized when he was reporting objective facts. Ivette also acknowledged that the situation was entirely consistent with Michael's philanthropic character, having donated millions to children's hospitals, medical research organizations, and educational programs over the years. She recalled the numerous times she had observed Michael interacting with sick children at charity events, always demonstrating a genuine compassion that transcended any public relations obligation. His explanation resonated within the context of who he was as a person and how he had consistently leveraged his wealth and influence to aid others. Michael, I've known you long enough to know when you're lying, and I can see that you're telling the truth, Ivette stated, her initial tension dissipating. Moreover, helping a sick child is precisely the kind of thing you would do, regardless of any personal connection. Ivette approached Michael and gently touched his arm, a gesture signifying understanding and support, rather than suspicion or jealousy. She explained that her initial reaction had stemmed not from marital insecurity, but from genuine concern when she saw her husband acting completely outside his usual behavioral norms. Ivette confessed to being curious and somewhat apprehensive when she learned Michael had canceled important meetings to meet an unknown woman, particularly since he had never mentioned Carmen throughout their years of marriage. However, after hearing the full explanation and observing the situation at the hospital, she understood that Michael was simply adhering to the values that had always defined his character. Ivette expressed admiration for the speed and efficiency with which Michael had mobilized resources to help Sophia, recognizing that few men in his position would have responded with such generosity and determination to a request for assistance from someone from their distant past. In fact, I'm proud of you for doing this, Michael, Ivette said, locking eyes with him. It shows that despite all the success and fame, you still retain the compassionate heart that made me fall in love with you. Precisely as marital tension was resolving, and Michael felt a tangible relief that Ivette had understood and supported his actions, his cell phone began to ring with the irritating urgency usually signaling a public relations crisis. Michael checked the caller ID and saw it was Marcus Thompson, his longtime press secretary, a seasoned professional who only called outside of business hours when situations demanded immediate attention. Michael answered the call with a growing sense of apprehension, knowing Marcus had an unpleasant habit of delivering complicated news often involving media speculation about his personal life. Marcus's voice sounded tense and worried on the other end of the line, carrying the tone Michael recognized as a precursor to significant public image complications. Marcus quickly explained that paparazzi photographers had managed to capture images of Michael entering the hospital with Carmen, and those photos were already circulating on social media with speculative captions about a possible affair or extramarital relationship. Michael, we have a serious public relations problem unfolding on social media, Marcus stated, his voice laced with professional urgency. A paparazzi photographer snapped a picture of you entering the hospital with a woman, and speculation about an affair is exploding online. Michael felt his stomach clench as he processed the implications of what Marcus was describing. He looked at Ivette, who could hear parts of the conversation and was already frowning with concern, and then thought of Carmen, somewhere in the hospital, completely oblivious to the fact that her personal crisis was about to become fodder for sensationalist tabloids. Michael knew from experience that celebrity relationship scandals took on a life of their own on social media, growing exponentially regardless of the actual facts, and that even truthful explanations were often disregarded in favor of more dramatic and saleable narratives. He immediately understood that both Ivette and Carmen were about to be dragged into a media circus they had neither chosen nor deserved to face. Michael ended the call with Marcus after instructing him to prepare a damage control strategy, then turned to Ivette with a grave expression she recognized as a harbinger of serious trouble. You both need to mentally brace yourselves for what's coming, Michael said gravely, looking directly at Ivette. Our private lives are about to become a public circus, and Carmen will be dragged into it without asking. 3 weeks after the paparazzi crisis, Michael sat in his office with Marcus Thompson, his press secretary, reviewing the results of a communication strategy that had transformed a potential PR catastrophe into one of the year's most inspiring stories. Marcus had suggested a full transparency approach, orchestrating a press conference where Michael publicly explained his decision to help Sophia, presenting Carmen as a childhood friend, and detailing how he had mobilized resources to save a teenage leukemia patient's life. The media response was extraordinarily positive, with journalists praising Michael for leveraging his influence and wealth for genuine humanitarian causes rather than mere image marketing. Tabloids that had initially speculated about affairs were forced to retract their stories, replacing sensationalized headlines with reports on generosity and social responsibility. Even the National Cancer Institute had invited Michael to become an official ambassador for their childhood leukemia awareness campaigns. Marcus showed Michael dozens of positive articles, letters from grateful families, and invitations to charity events that had arrived since the public revelation of the story. The crisis had become an opportunity for Michael to demonstrate that his wealth and fame served purposes beyond personal luxury. "Michael, this is literally the best press coverage you've ever had in your entire career," Marcus said, piling newspaper clippings on the table. "People are seeing you as a genuine hero, not just a wealthy athlete making donations out of fiscal obligation." Meanwhile, at the university hospital where Sophia was receiving treatment in the country's most advanced pediatric oncology ward, Carmen and Ivette had developed an unexpected friendship that both found surprising for its naturalness and sincerity. Ivette visited Sophia almost daily, bringing books, games, and small gifts that brightened the long days of chemotherapy and recovery. Carmen initially felt uneasy about the considerable attention from Michael's wife, fearing Yvette's kindness might be a marital obligation, but gradually realized her interest was genuinely maternal and compassionate. Ivette had lost a younger brother to leukemia at 20, a familial tragedy she rarely discussed publicly, yet one that fostered a profound emotional connection to Sophia's situation. The two women spent hours conversing in the hospital room, sharing stories about their lives, their maternal anxieties, and interestingly, anecdotes about Michael's personality quirks, each possessing a unique perspective. Carmen recounted the stubborn, competitive teenager who insisted on basketball practice even when ill, while Ivette revealed how Michael maintained some of the same obsessive organizational and punctuality habits likely developed during his youth. "It's incredible how Michael hasn't changed in certain ways," Ivette remarked, chuckling as she organized Sophia's medications. "Carmen, do you recall how he'd become agitated when someone was late for any engagement, even a casual one?" Sophia was responding exceptionally well to the treatment protocol Michael had meticulously arranged, with her white blood cell count improving steadily each week of chemotherapy. Dr. Harrison, the renowned pediatric oncologist whom Michael had personally secured, was impressed not only by Sophia's medical response, but also by her positive attitude and unwavering determination during the healing process. Sophia had become a sort of informal leader among the other young patients on the oncology ward, organizing study sessions for those missing school and creating a support group where adolescents with cancer could openly discuss their fears and hopes. Michael visited the hospital at least twice a week, always bringing small but meaningful gifts: veterinary books, intricate puzzles that challenged Sophia's mind during periods of enforced rest, and occasionally electronic equipment that allowed her to maintain contact with school friends via video calls. During these visits, Michael observed how Sophia interacted with other sick children, noting her inherent leadership qualities and compassion that reminded him not only of Carmen, but also of his own determination to transform adversity into opportunities for personal growth. "Sophia, you have a natural gift for inspiring others to maintain hope," Michael observed during one visit. "Have you considered how you might use this experience to help other families facing similar situations?" It was during one of these conversations that Michael began to formulate an idea that would grow into one of the most significant projects of his philanthropic life. He had observed how Sophia, even while battling her own cancer, consistently demonstrated concern and compassion for other patients, especially those whose families lacked the financial resources for optimal treatment or adequate emotional support. Michael also noticed how Carmen, despite her own maternal anxieties, had become a source of strength for other mothers in the oncology ward, offering embraces, words of encouragement, and practical assistance navigating the complex hospital system. The idea of establishing a permanent institution that combined top-tier medical treatment with emotional and financial support for families in crisis began to take shape in Michael's strategic mind. He embarked on research into gaps in the children's healthcare system, consulting physicians, hospital administrators, and families who had faced situations similar to Carmen and Sophia's. Michael discovered that thousands of children died annually, not due to a lack of effective treatments, but due to a lack of access to those treatments because of financial, geographical, or social barriers. Yvette, I'm thinking of creating something permanent that can help hundreds of families like Carmen's, Michael said one evening at home. A nonprofit institute seamlessly integrating cutting-edge medical treatment with comprehensive support for families facing insurmountable financial burdens. 6 months after Sophia completed her final round of chemotherapy, a complete remission confirmed by medical evaluations, Michael publicly announced the establishment of the Jordan Pediatric Oncology Institute, a foundation designed to combine state-of-the-art medical facilities with family support programs, groundbreaking treatment research, and scholarships for young cancer survivors pursuing careers in medicine. The institute would be built on a 50-acre campus, specifically acquired by Michael, featuring therapeutic gardens, recreational spaces for children, family apartments for extended treatment stays, and research laboratories where the world's leading scientists would work to develop more effective and less traumatic therapies. Michael personally pledged $100 million to the initial project, but also launched a fundraising campaign that garnered donations from fellow athletes, business leaders, and celebrities inspired by Sophia's story. Carmen was appointed the inaugural executive director, a position leveraging her accounting expertise and profound understanding of the challenges families face during childhood medical crises. Carmen, I want you to lead this institute because no one understands the needs of families during such times better than you, Michael declared. Your personal experience, coupled with your professional acumen, makes you the ideal candidate to ensure that we never leave a family to face this battle alone. The subsequent 2 years witnessed extraordinary transformation for all involved. Sophia not only fully recovered from leukemia, but also accelerated her high school studies to graduate a year early, enabling her to commence pre-medical university studies at age 18 on a full scholarship established specifically for child cancer survivors by Michael. She had shifted her veterinary aspirations to human medicine, specifically pediatric oncology, inspired by her own experiences and a desire to aid other children facing similar battles. Carmen had become an exceptional administrator, leveraging her meticulous financial acumen and innate empathy to craft programs that truly address the needs of families in crisis. The Institute had treated over 300 children in its first 2 years of operation, maintaining a cure rate exceeding national averages due to the combined effect of advanced medical treatment, consistent emotional support, and the elimination of the financial stressors that frequently complicated recovery processes. Michael and Ivette had become national advocates for reforms in the child healthcare system, using their public platforms to raise awareness about the necessity of making pediatric oncology treatments accessible to all families, regardless of their economic standing. Seeing Sophia transform from patient to future physician is proof that investing in children always pays off, Ivette stated during an interview. Michael has found a way to multiply his generosity from one life saved to hundreds of lives transformed. 5 years after that desperate call that had altered all their lives, Michael stood before the Jordan Institute for Pediatric Oncology on a sunny morning, observing the final preparations for the inauguration ceremony of the new research pavilion, funded by donations from companies and individuals inspired by the Institute's mission. The campus had transformed into a vibrant community where children ran through meticulously designed gardens. Families smiled as they participated in group therapy sessions, and researchers tirelessly worked in laboratories representing the cutting edge of pediatric oncology medicine. Sophia, now 22 and about to graduate medical school, had become the Institute's public face, speaking at medical conferences about the importance of holistic treatment that addresses not only the disease, but also the emotional and social well-being of young patients. Carmen had expanded the Institute to include training programs for other hospitals wishing to implement similar integrated family care models. Michael observed the staff, volunteers, families, and children preparing for the ceremony, feeling a profound sense of fulfillment that surpassed any feeling he'd experienced during his most significant basketball victories or most lucrative business successes. Michael, are you ready to cut the ribbon and officially open the pavilion that will save thousands of lives? Asked Sophia, approaching him in her medical scrubs. I will never be able to adequately thank you for saving my life and then giving me the opportunity to save others. The opening ceremony attracted hundreds, including families aided by the Institute, doctors and researchers from across the country, health-focused journalists, and politicians supporting expanded pediatric health programs. Michael, Carmen, Sophia, and Ivette stood together before the red ribbon, symbolically separating the Institute's past from the expanded dreams of its future. The crowd included dozens of children currently receiving treatment at the Institute, many holding handmade signs expressing gratitude and hope. Parents embraced watching their children play in the gardens, knowing their children had access to the best possible medical care without the financial strain that could have destroyed their families. A national television network reporter approached Michael with a camera, preparing to ask the question that would encapsulate the significance of everything that had transpired since that afternoon when Carmen desperately called for help. Michael gazed around the vibrant campus, listening to the laughter of children winning their battles against cancer and witnessing families finding hope in their darkest hours. Mr. Jordan, what truly motivates you to continue investing so much time, energy, and resources in helping others? Asked the reporter. Sometimes the greatest victory is not what you achieve for yourself. It is what you help others achieve for themselves, replied Michael, looking directly at Sophia and then Ivette, his smile reflecting a profound peace that stemmed from knowing he had used his life to create something far greater than any individual success. Years had passed since that desperate phone call that irrevocably altered the lives of 4 extraordinary individuals. Michael Jordan sat in his favorite armchair in the office of the Jordan Institute for Pediatric Oncology, gazing through the panoramic window at hundreds of children playing in the expansive campus gardens, a facility now a global benchmark in pediatric oncology treatment. The institute had grown exponentially beyond any initial dream, now operating 5 campuses across different states, treating over 5,000 children annually and maintaining a cure rate exceeding 95% for various types of childhood cancers. Michael held a handwritten letter from Sophia, now Dr. Sophia Martinez, who had become one of the country's most esteemed pediatric oncologists at the young age of 32, leading the Institute's research program and spearheading clinical studies that were revolutionizing treatments for childhood leukemia. In the letter, Sophia announced her acceptance to a position on the World Council of Pediatric Oncology, an honor reserved for the most influential physicians in her field. Michael, after all these years, I still get emotional reading about her achievements, said Carmen, entering the office carrying a folder brimming with the Institute's financial reports. Carmen had become one of the country's most respected nonprofit administrators, frequently invited to lecture at universities on the efficient management of philanthropic resources. Under her administrative leadership, the Institute had managed to operate with operational costs representing only 12% of the total budget, directing 88% of all resources directly to patient care and medical research. Carmen had developed a management model being replicated by charitable organizations worldwide, demonstrating that compassion and administrative efficiency could coexist seamlessly when led by individuals with an intimate understanding of the needs they were striving to address. Carmen, you've transformed this institute into a life-saving machine operating with the precision of a world-class corporation, Michael responded, gesturing to the immaculate financial reports. Sophia may be the medical heart of this organization, but you are undeniably the administrative brain that keeps everything running seamlessly. Michael rose and walked to a wall laden with photographs documenting the Institute's evolution over the decade. Images showcased children healed, families gathered at celebratory hospital discharges, physicians receiving awards for groundbreaking research developed in the Institute's labs, and politicians signing legislation inspired by the integrated care model Carmen and Sophia had developed. A particularly poignant photograph depicted Ivette cutting the ribbon at the Institute's 6th campus, situated in a rural region where families previously traveled hundreds of miles to access specialized oncology treatment. Ivette, now 57, had become a tireless advocate for universal access to quality medical care, leveraging her experience as an international model to highlight healthcare disparities disproportionately impacting low-income families. She had established her own foundation focused on training oncology nurses specializing in pediatric care, recognizing that talented physicians needed equally skilled support teams to maximize their life-saving capabilities. I remember when Ivette told me she wanted to do more than simply be Michael Jordan's wife, commented Carmen, gesturing to the photograph. She truly found her own mission through our experience, now independently impacting thousands of lives. The conversation was interrupted by Sophia's arrival. She entered the office with the radiant energy that always characterized her, even during the most challenging days of her own treatment. Wearing her physician's coat, the Institute's emblem embroidered on the pocket, she carried a tablet brimming with data on a novel treatment protocol she was developing in collaboration with researchers from 3 different countries. Sophia had published 17 articles in prestigious medical journals, received 6 international awards for innovation in pediatric oncology, and was a frequent speaker at medical conferences worldwide. However, for Michael and Carmen, she would always be the courageous young woman who transformed her own battle with cancer into a life's mission dedicated to ensuring that other children had access to the same healing opportunities she had received. However, for Michael and Carmen, she would always be the courageous young woman who transformed her own battle with cancer into a life's mission dedicated to ensuring that other children had access to the same healing opportunities she had received. Michael, Carmen, I have incredible news to share with you, Sophia said, her eyes shining with excitement. The experimental protocol we developed here has yielded such promising results that the World Health Organization wants to implement it as a global standard for treating childhood leukemia. Michael felt a familiar surge of paternal pride, the same sensation he experienced whenever Sophia reached new milestones in her extraordinary medical career. Since her recovery, he had watched Sophia evolve from a courageous patient into a medical leader who was literally saving thousands of lives through her research and clinical innovations. Carmen approached Sophia and embraced her with the profound love of a mother who had witnessed her daughter overcome seemingly insurmountable challenges and emerge stronger, more compassionate, and more determined to make a difference in the world. The trio remained silent for a few moments, each reflecting on the extraordinary journey that had brought them from that desperate day in the hospital to this moment of scientific triumph that would benefit children globally. Sophia, when I was young, I always dreamt of being remembered for the records I set in basketball, Michael said, looking directly into her eyes. But now I realize that the most important legacy I can leave is having helped create the conditions for you to become the extraordinary physician and researcher you are today. Later that day, Michael drove alone to the cemetery where James and Dolores Jordan were buried, a pilgrimage he made at least once a month to mentally share his life's achievements and challenges with his parents. He knelt before the simple yet elegant headstones, placing fresh flowers he had stopped to buy along the way. Michael always believed that his parents, even after death, continued to influence his decisions through the fundamental values they had instilled in him during his youth. Michael spoke softly of Sophia, Carmen, and Ivette, and how the experience of saving a life had evolved into a mission now impacting thousands of families annually. He explained to his parents how he'd channeled the principles of hard work, compassion, and social responsibility they'd instilled to create something transcending any individual achievement he'd attained as an athlete or businessman. "Dad, Mom, I hope you're proud of the man I've become," Michael murmured, gently touching the tombstones. "I've used everything you taught me about helping others to build something that will continue saving lives long after I'm gone." As the sun dipped below the horizon, Michael drove home where Ivette awaited him with a special dinner to celebrate Sophia's announcement of international recognition for her research. The table was set with the fine china reserved for exceptional occasions, and Ivette had prepared all of Michael's favorite dishes, including the chocolate dessert he rarely allowed himself, given his rigorous nutritional discipline. They discussed plans to expand the Institute to developing nations, the possibility of Sophia eventually taking the helm, and how to structure the program's continuity to ensure their survival independent of the original founder's physical presence. "Michael, sometimes I reflect on how one desperate phone call transformed our lives in ways we could never have imagined," Ivette said, holding his hand across the table. "Carmen and Sophia have become family to us, and together we've created something enduring, something that will outlive us all." That evening, before drifting off to sleep, Michael opened his laptop and began writing in the digital journal he'd maintained for years, documenting reflections on leadership, purpose, and legacy. He wrote about how true wealth wasn't measured in accumulated dollars, but in the capacity to transform resources into opportunities that allowed others to reach their full potential. Michael pondered how his journey had evolved from the days when he measured success by championship titles and sponsorship contracts to a deeper understanding that true greatness or stem from leveraging talents and resources to uplift others. He concluded his journal entry with an observation encapsulating everything he had learned, that life's most consequential moments often arrive disguised as inconvenient interruptions, and that the willingness to respond to pleas for assistance from those genuinely in need can transform not only their lives, but also define the true legacy we leave for the world. The greatest prize I've ever won wasn't any trophy or medal, Michael wrote in his final reflection. It was the opportunity to help a young woman become a physician and through her, save thousands of other lives I will never personally know, but who were nonetheless touched by the choice I made to answer a desperate phone call. If Michael Jordan, Ivette Prieto, and Carmen's journey resonated with you, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and discover the captivating narrative we've crafted for you now. Until next time, before you go, comment on where you're watching from and tell me, what were your thoughts on the conclusion of this story?